All right, everyone. So, I would like to welcome you to something I've been working on for a couple weeks. By the end of this unit on Mesoamerica, which is America in Central and South America before the Spanish came, and then right as they were conquered, we're going to learn about the Aztec, the Maya, and the Inca. We're also going to learn about key players. In the Inca, their king was Atahualpa. Their conquistador was Pizarro from Spain. We're going to learn about Diego de Landa, his conquest of the Maya. We're going to learn about Hernan Cortez and his conquest of the Aztec. These were empires that had existed for thousands of years before the arrival of any European. And this is what happens when worlds collide. And so with that, welcome to the first lesson. It'll span today and tomorrow. And specifically, we'll be learning about Columbus, the Taíno, and first contact. Does anyone want to raise their hand and tell me what first contact means? Yeah, kind of. How about when a group of people first meet another group of people, right? First contact with a civilization. In this case, does anyone want to tell me what stood between the old world, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the new world, the Americas? What lay between them? Not the Pacific Ocean, but your head's in the right place. What ocean? The Atlantic Ocean. And those little wooden ships, it's got to be pretty hard to go that far. So, Columbus was among the first. But last week, I remind you all, we learned about a Viking named Leif Erikson. And Leif Erikson was the first to reach North America 500 years before Columbus. He went from Greenland with his Viking settlers, and they founded a place called Vinland in Canada. Without further ado, let's begin. All right, so we have a bit of context here. This is called the Reconquista. And what happened here was Muslims from North Africa, so people that don't follow Christianity, had conquered Spain. Look here. Yes. North Africa, Spain, very close to each other, are they not? So, for nearly 800 years, the Muslims hold control of Spain. We see evidence of this based on the artwork that they do on tiles called mosaics. We see it on the kind of buildings that they have, those rounded tops, like in mosques. These were called the Spanish Moors, M-O-O-R-S. And what's very fascinating about the Spanish Moors is, like I say, they will hold Spain for 800 years. There's going to be a gradual conflict where the Spanish will reclaim Spain for Christianity. If you look at this, it's a map of Spain. Every color is another 100 years. We start in the north, they start waking their way down. Another 100 years, another 100 years, another 100 years. How many families have lived and died in this time? And now finally, when we come to Columbus's time, the last bastion of Moorish resistance lies in the south, in the tip of Spain called Granada. Generations rose and fell under the banner of the Reconquista. By January 1492, the last Moorish stronghold at Granada surrendered to King Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabel of Castile. The victory was celebrated as a divine triumph. God had conquered the Moors. Spain, at last united under one crown and one faith, basked in newfound pride. War had filled its coffers, sharpened its armies, and steeled its rulers with ambition. Now, flush with victory and confidence, Spain turned outward. The same crusading zeal that had driven knights across the Iberian Peninsula would soon be carried across the Atlantic Ocean. The Reconquista had ended, But for Spain's monarchs, the conquest had just begun. Welcome, Columbus. Into this heady moment stepped Christopher Columbus, a Genoese navigator with stars in his eyes. Columbus believed he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean that no European had yet crossed. He presented his bold plan to the king and queen. 3 small ships and about 90 men would set out into the unknown, and any new lands would belong to Spain. The queen and king agreed to finance the expedition and even promoted Columbus to governor of any territory that he claimed. So he would be in charge of ruling these lands that he discovered. Make sense? Now, of course, as governor, he's still going to send money to the king and queen, and that's what's important for them, gold. Columbus painted his mission as holy and peaceful. He assured the Taíno when they met that he came not to subjugate you, but to teach you the true religion by love, not by force. He strode aboard the Santa Maria and the Niña with a rosary in one hand and dreams of fortune in the other. Yet his intentions were not so pure, my friends. Columbus spoke of bringing Christianity to the Taíno, but in his diary, he privately wrote, "With just 50 men, we could capture them all and make them do whatever we want." Thus, 2 forces drove this journey into the New World side by side. A vision of spreading faith and a hunger for gold. What was the true mission? To save souls or to find treasure? For Columbus, it was both. Let's take a detour. I want you guys to get an image in your head of what this journey might have been like. And now I can't take 3 weeks of your time and put you across the ocean. I can show you a beautiful replica of the Santa Maria that goes from port to port and most recently came to Florida about 3 months ago. And then we're going to look at how Columbus was able to navigate the open ocean and still kind of know where he was going.
You might notice the crazy looking boat behind me. That's an exact replica of the Santa Maria.
Called a now, this unique type of vessel was developed in the 15th century.
It's very unique. Definitely it's very unique. This type of vessel were used as a cargo ship. It's very round shaped, the hull. The bow and the stern are very high. So you are not able to see pretty much anything from the bridge. Coming in and out of port, you need one guy here, another back. 92 feet length overall. The beam is 26. We draft 10 feet, and the air draft is like 82 feet.
How high is the cross?
So the cross is like 75 feet from the waterline.
Okay.
She was launched in March 16th, 2018. The idea was to commemorate the original journey back in 1492. We did the crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. It took us 29 days, 6 days, the first leg from Huelva to Canary Islands, and then the second leg from Canary Islands to Puerto Rico, 23. For the very first crossing, it took them 36 days. They got stuck in the middle of the ocean because they missed the winds, and then also they got stuck in the Sargasso Island. The replica is faithful in terms of design, shape and size. We do have technical equipment as it requires. GPS, radar, life raft. So we've hit a few storms. We try to avoid them though, but you know, sometimes it happens and you are in the middle of it. Mixing the rolling from side to side with the up and down, you can be a very experienced sailor, but your body have to get used to. So this is a Falconete, and this will be like a small cannon. We do have 4 cannons, like proper cannons. We are certified to hold 24 crew members, but we have only 19 beds. And we have 2 engines, John Deere.
John Deere?
Yeah, 250.
250 horse?
2
of them.
Yes.
So 500 horsepower. Total.
Yes. We do 6 knots average
Okay.
speed.
Okay.
We also take part in movies or film productions.
Hello mates, my name is Captain Jack Sparrow, on board the now Santa Maria.
They hire us also in order to set sails or go up and down, whatever. So I was the one chosen to the role of saying land ahoy.
Okay.
So
That was
I had,
the line?
yeah. So I had a line and I was land ahoy.
Nautic Ed, the world's most advanced online sailing education. Dead Reckoning. 2 hours ago we left Point Judith travelling east by the compass at 5 knots. We want to find our dead reckon position. We transfer 90 degrees magnetic from the compass rose up to Point Judith and extend a line. We measure 10 nautical miles on the latitude scale of the chart with the dividers. We transfer that distance to the extended line starting at Point Judith. That's our dead reckon position.
So, going forward, we will discuss the morality, whether he was good or bad, or just a person, of Christopher Columbus. But one thing I hear a lot that I hate is people saying he was stupid. Christopher Columbus was not stupid. He used what they knew at the time. Dead reckoning, having to use math and time to guess his position, and to still make it all the way across, is important. It wasn't a straight shot. There was no guarantee he was going to necessarily make it to land alive. This was a brave mission that few people wanted to do and very few people had done. Nobody had made it that far. So, just going forward, this man was a map maker. He was wealthy, he was educated. He was not stupid. He was a liar. What's up? They absolutely thought that there were monsters in the sea. Columbus did not expect to find the New World. Nobody knew that the New World really existed. Columbus thought that he could make it all the way to Japan, and that way they could do trade. The reason for that is because the land roads between Asia and Europe, where they're living, were controlled by the Muslims. And so they didn't want to do that trade, and the Muslims banned a lot of trade. At the same time, the Muslims had just destroyed the capital of Christianity in Europe less than 50 years ago. This was called Constantinople. So Christians were very afraid. They wanted to find a way to Asia without having to trade with the Muslims. Does that make sense? And the only way they could think of was by sea. Instead, they're going to come across the Americas lying smack dab in their path. On August 3rd, 1492, Columbus and his crew left the port of Palos de la Frontera with prayers on their lips. 3 tiny ships, the Santa Maria, the Niña, and the Pinta, cracked out from harbor under full sail. After a brief stop at the Canary Islands off of Africa, they plunged into the open Atlantic. For weeks, only sky and water surrounded them. From the start, hope and fear rode the ship together. Supplies ran low, and the men grew restless. Some sailors whispered about going home. Each morning, Columbus climbed to the deck to call the crew to prayer. He told stories of Cathai's golden riches and fabled silks, sure that they soon would find these wonders for themselves. His confidence was contagious, and the crew began to believe. By night, tension ran high. Under a cloak of stars, the Atlantic was an endless void. Every snap of rope or a roll of a wave made hearts pound. Imagine yourself with 30 men on that tiny ship huddled on the deck at midnight. Maybe it's raining. Maybe there's a storm batting the hull beneath you and you can't even see the waves. Would you have stayed brave? Even in those darkest watches, Columbus kept the faith alive and prayed for the dawn. At 2 a.m., a watchman from the Pinta think his name was De Rodriguez, De Rod something. He yells, "Tierra! Land ahoy!" Columbus steps up onto the deck, and there it is, the white cliffs of an island out in the distant night horizon. But see, Columbus is not nice. So the king and queen, before they set off, promised a pension of 10,000 credits per year to whoever saw land first. Do you think Columbus gave it to the watchman? No? Raise your hand if you think no. You'd be correct. Columbus then said, well, I saw lights out that way at 11 a.m., so technically I saw it first. Now, I remind you guys that part of Columbus's mission is to turn people to Christ, to convert them to Christianity, right? Legend has it that the watchman that saw land was so offended that he converted to Islam. So Columbus started his journey off at -1. But now the other side of the story. Columbus stepped onto the sand, believing he had reached uncharted lands. He did not know he had arrived among the Taíno people, who had called these islands home for many generations. Each Taíno village was led by a cacique, or chief, and a council of Taínos, or noble advisors. The naborias, or commoners, were farmers, fishers, and craftsmen who made life possible. Power passed through the mother's line so that wise and strong women could become leaders. One of these leaders was Ana Caona of Hispaniola, whose name meant golden flower. She was a celebrated cacica, a queen, known for her poetry and her diplomacy. Ana Caona wove sacred ballads called aretos to honor her ancestors and to guide her people. Long before Columbus's ships broke the horizon, she united villagers with alliance and trade. She ruled her people with grace and wisdom. In many ways, she embodied the creativity and the diligence of the Taíno people. To Columbus and his crew, the shore might have looked like empty sand and palm trees. In truth, it was the edge of a living world, of chiefs and villages, of farmers tending fields of manioc, sweet potatoes, and maize. The Taíno built sturdy canoes to travel between islands, wove cotton into cloth, and carved art from wood and stone. They worshipped zemis, or ancestral spirits, so they believed that they could communicate with their dead loved ones. And they did so by going into caves and doing rituals, including songs like the areto, where they would try to talk to the dead. Their shamans guided rituals to keep balance with nature. What you guys must understand is that the Europeans did not come across a group of savages. They came across a living, breathing world that had developed for thousands of years with just as many rulers, families, joys, and losses as anyone else in the world had suffered. The only difference was their technology was not as advanced. They weren't able to go across the ocean in wooden ships. They didn't have guns. They didn't have steel. As we go through the stories for these next few months, I want you to ask yourself, does that make them worse? Does that make the Europeans better? Well, let's take a look. Let's realize that these are people. At this time, the native peoples of this region speak a language called Arawak. Arawak. Now they speak Spanish. Why? That's what we're learning about today. Why did they go from Arawak to speaking Spanish? It's because of Columbus and everything that came after. So, the next morning, a flotilla of Taíno canoes paddled out to meet the ships under a calm blue sky. The islanders came unarmed and smiling, leaning forward in their boats with offerings in hand. They traded generously. Parrots with bright green and red feathers, woven bundles of cotton cloth, and baskets of fresh fruit and food went to the Spaniards in exchange for glass beads and trinkets. Columbus watched in astonishment and relief as these proud people shared openly. They seemed eager to share and pleased by the exchange, a surprising contrast after weeks of fear at sea. Columbus described the Taíno as tall, sturdy people with smooth bronze skin and very handsome bodies. He saw that they wore only simple cotton garments and lived in clean, well-swept huts. The natives greeted the strangers with warmth and song. They might have been invited to the dance that we just saw. This song that we're hearing now is a welcome song for the Taíno. For a moment, everything felt peaceful and full of wonder. It was as if two worlds, meeting for the first time, were discovering just how well they could really get along. And with that, we're going to finish my lecture of day one, and tomorrow we're going to finish our story of Columbus.